Okay, so now we get to see how everybody did with PEMDAS. I'm going to go quick, but I'm still going to draw all those little arrowheads that I did before. Everybody is subtraction, so 6 minus 5 is 1, and then I recopy the rest. Now 1 minus 2 you could either do on a number line or you could change that to plus and negative. The signs are different. So I take their difference and keep the sign of the negative number. So there's number 1. Number 2, 6 times 2 minus 2. Well, multiplication beats subtraction, so I'm going to do 6 times 2. Then I'm going to bring down the minus 2. 12 minus 2 is 10. Number 3, 16 divided by parenthesis negative 1 minus 3. Okay, so for this one we want to do our parenthesis first. So inside the parentheses is negative 1 minus 3, and if that messes with you, change that minus to plus a negative. So negative 1 plus negative 3 is negative 4. They have the same sign, so we add them and keep the sign. In front of that is a 16 divided by. Okay, notice I kept that in parentheses, and I think it's just so it was easier for me to look at, because now it's 16 divided by negative 4. Well, what is 16 divided by 4? 16 divided by 4 is 4, but remember, if you're multiplying or dividing and one of them's positive and one of them's negative, the answer is going to be negative. Number 4, 9 divided by 3 to the third power. Okay, we do the parentheses first, so inside the parentheses is 9 divided by 3, which is 3, and then that has a 3 on it. So what does that mean? Well, it means to do 3 times itself 3 times. So 3 times 3 times 3, and that would be 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3, 27. Number 5. We have negative 2 minus 3 divided by negative 5. Okay, so parentheses first. And when you're trying to do this, if you don't like the minus, I don't like the minus in between. I always change that to plus and negative. Now they have the same sign, so I can add them and keep the sign. Divided by negative 5. Well, it's the same thing. Negative 5 divided by negative 5. If you're dividing a number by itself, it's just 1. And since it's a negative divided by a negative, that's going to turn the answer positive. Number 6 is 6 minus 5 minus 2. Okay? All subtraction, so just do it in the order you see it. You know what? I've done this problem before. Deja vu. Number 1. Ha ha ha. Sorry about that. I don't know how I must have accidentally recopied that one. So there, if you got number 1 right, hopefully you got number 6 right. Number 7, 2 plus 4 minus 6, and then times negative 4. Ooh, that's tricky. This is a tricky one. Some of you will miss this, but that's okay. Let's do it together. Parentheses first, 4 minus 6, okay? Well, 4 minus 6, I can change that to a plus negative. And so 4 plus a negative 6, the signs are different, so you take the difference and you keep the sign of the bigger number. I'm going to keep that in parentheses because I want to recopy the rest of this. Bring down the 2, bring down the plus, bring down the times negative 4. Now, there's either addition between these numbers or there's multiplication between these numbers. You have to multiply first. Negative 2 times negative 4. Okay? So don't think of that as times minus 4 like that. That's not a subtract. That's just a negative. So a negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8 because a negative times a negative is a positive. Then you recopy what's in the front. So bring that down, bring that down. 2 plus 8 is 10. So if you got that right, I'm super impressed because that is really tricky. Number 8. It's going to be just as tricky, I think. Negative 2 minus 1 minus negative 2 squared. Okay, so we're supposed to do the parentheses first for PEMDAS. So parentheses means these numbers. 1 minus negative 2, okay? That's weird. But there's minus in the middle. So remember, if there's a minus, you can change it to a plus, but you have to change the sign behind it. So if you change a sign, you immediately change the sign behind it. So now it's just 1 plus 2, which is 3. Recopy the exponent, recopy the junk that's in the front. All right, now what? Now we do the exponent. 3 squared means 3 times 3, and that's a 9. So I'm just going to bring that part down. Now we can do this math. So I've got a negative 2 minus 9. I don't like minus. I change it to plus minus. Okay, I always change those signs. Negative 2 plus negative 9, they now have the same sign. They both are negative. So I add them and I keep the sign. All right, so negative 11 is your answer. Number 9. 6 minus negative 18 plus 3 divided by negative 5. Okay. So what do I do first? Well, parentheses. Let me just do what jumps out at me, which is the parentheses are always first. Negative 18 plus 3. They have different signs, so I take their difference and I keep the sign of the bigger number. So all of that was my parentheses. 6 minus that divided by that. Now, if you look at, we have 3 different numbers. We have a 6, a negative 15, and a negative 5. And if you're trying to decide what to do next, you've already done the number in parentheses, okay? I only rewrote those to help me see what was going on. But if you don't like them, you know, you don't have to write those parentheses right there. You could just write it like that. Now, what's going to win, subtraction or division? Well, division has to be done first, okay? So I'm going to recopy the 6 and the minus, and I'm going to go ahead and do this now. What is negative 15 divided by negative 5? That would be a positive 3, everybody, because 15 divided by 5 is 3. A negative and a negative together make a positive. So now I just do 6 minus 3 is 3, and that is my final answer. That's another tricky one, so hopefully you got that right. Number 10, it looks like all the rest of these are tricky, so every time you get one of these right, you just need to high-five yourself, because the first few were not so bad, but these are where it gets real. It gets real. All right. So I've got 2 sets of parentheses, so I'm going to do both of those, okay? So the first set of parentheses is just 8. I'm going to recopy that divide. Negative 2 minus 2. That is not a 0. Some of you think it's a 0. It's not. Remember, a minus in between, make it a plus minus. So a negative 2 plus another negative 2 is actually a negative 4. They have the same sign, so you add them, and then you keep the sign that was on them, okay? Now we're going to do 8 divided by negative 4. Well, what's 8 divided by 4? Well, that's 2. One of them's positive, one of them's negative, so the answer is negative. Number 11. Negative 5 times negative 3 plus negative 2 squared times negative 1. Oh my gosh. Okay. This looks terrible. Now, there is a giant set of parentheses, which means I'm supposed to do everything in here first. But even though I'm supposed to do everything in here first, you're still supposed to do PEMDAS inside of these parentheses. So the exponent should be the first thing you do inside the parentheses. So negative 2 squared, that means negative 2 times negative 2. So when you do negative 2 times negative 2, that should be a positive 4. So I've just handled that, okay? I'm going to recopy the rest of this mess. It's all still in parentheses. Now I'm still in the parentheses, so what would I do next? The times or the add? Well, I need to do the multiplication first, because it wins in PEMDAS. So negative 5 times negative 3, that's a positive 15, because a negative times a negative is a positive. I bring down the plus 4. I have times a negative 1. I still am in the parentheses, so I'm still working on that. 15 plus 4 is 19. And you can write the parentheses or you can drop it, because we finally got one number, so let's not write the parentheses again. We finally are down to one number. and then times a negative 1. So 19 times 1 is 19, but one of them's positive, one of them's negative, so the answer is negative. That's crazy. Let me know if you get that one right because, wow. All right, number 12. Negative 9 times 2 minus 2 divided by negative 2 squared. Okay, so we have a lot going on here. I'm going to stay in this parentheses first, then I'll worry about this because even though that's got a parenthesis, there's really nothing inside except one number. So that's really just more like an exponent than it is a parenthesis. So we're going to deal with all this first. Now inside here, should I do the multiply first or the subtract first? Well, I should do the multiply first. So negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. I'm going to recopy the minus 2. And if you want to go ahead and do that, you can, or you can wait till you finish this. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and do it now, I guess. A negative 2 times a negative 2, that's a positive 4, okay? Now, we're back to this parenthesis over here. We've got to do all this before we do the divide. Negative 18 minus 2, that's the same as that. So negative 18 minus 2 is negative 20, okay, or plus a negative 2. And then we've got divided by 4. Now we can do the divide. 20 divided by 4 is 5, but one of them's negative and one of them's positive. So hopefully you got that. That one was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Okay, number 13. Almost done. Of course, this is going to be the fraction one that everybody hates me for. Okay. Now, when you have this, what are you supposed to do? Well, there's minus and there's times. So do these first, okay? So I'm going to multiply these first. Remember how I showed y'all you could do the reducing early? So I'm actually going to, 3 and 4 don't reduce, 8 and 5 don't reduce, 3 and 5 don't reduce, but 8 and 4 reduce. So I'm actually going to cross that out and make it a 1, and cross that out and make it a 2. So this is just me reducing early. Then I'm going to do top times top is 6, bottom times bottom is 5. Now, if you did not do that in the beginning, that's fine. If you did not reduce, I'm going to do it both ways. That was a 4, that was an 8. So let's say you didn't. That's okay. You would have right now a 24 over a 20. And we can do the problem that way if you want. We can leave it that way. That's also fine. I've got a 7/4 in the front that I'm going to bring down. And now we have to subtract fractions, so we need a common denominator. Well, I need to make that a 20. This one's already a 20. And so that means I'm timesing it by 5. So make sure that you multiply the top and the bottom by 5 to get your common denominator. And now 35 minus 24 is 11. And you recopy your denominator. So 11/20. So some of you are not going to miss that because of PEMDAS. You're just going to miss it because you and fractions are not really good friends. And you just decided you don't like them. Okay, so what's now? We've got an exponent, we've got a multiply. And so the exponent wins, so it'll be 4 times 6/5, okay? Because 2 times itself is 4. Now, when I multiply a whole number with a fraction, if you forgot how to do this, you just have to turn the whole number into a fraction by sticking it over 1. Then you can do top times top, bottom times bottom, and that is a perfectly acceptable answer. If you turned it into a mixed number, I guess that would be 4 and 4/5. So either of those is fine, but don't do decimals. Okay, you're really not going to need decimals that much, I hope, next year. So you can just leave it like that. Okay, that should be it. Hopefully it went well for you guys. Later.